Oh, same old, same old.
Rated PG.
I got you, babe. I got you, babe.
Hey, how we doing? Everybody good? Yeah, let's clap for something. Come on. I don't know. Man, we're stoked you're here. Before we get into it, if I could just underline something Chris said, like our baptism thing is a big deal. We do it 2, maybe 3 times a year. And if you're a person that hasn't taken that step and you're thinking, yeah, I'm following Jesus, this kind of seals it. This like is like burning the ships. Everybody's gonna know you're a Christ follower after this, right? And so it's an awesome victory when you take that step. And if you're thinking, I don't know, should I do that? I don't know. Well, up there, are we doing that? I don't see a sign. All right. Did you get, right? There should be a sign, but apparently there's not. All right, Dave Clark's gonna stand there and he's just gonna wave. Is that you, Dave? Yeah. So we're just go up there and we'll do a little baptism orientation so you know what you're getting yourself into. And if you go, well, I don't know, they'll help you figure that out. And it'll be a great experience. It takes about 15 minutes at the most, so you should be good, all right? Good? Yeah? And the rest of us, it's gonna be a party. We barbecue, it's fun. The kids are out of control. It's just awesome. It's really cool. So, and then a few of you, I don't know, if you come here all the time, you might not be asking this. You might be thinking, dude, should he be wearing like a commercial t-shirt on his, as he preaches the word of God? And like, what kind of person is this? Would he like just shill for maybe a free taco with Sombrero's Taco? And if you know me, the answer is an unequivocal, you bet. Yeah, absolutely I would. So yeah, look, if you follow Sombreros on Instagram, I'm gonna try to get myself on there, and maybe a burrito or a carne asada fries are in my future. So no, actually, the guy who owns it goes here and he's just, so it's just fun. So this God at the Movies thing, this weekend is People's Choice. There's one more weekend after that where you had no choice in, but this is the People's Choice. And it's been no secret which movie I wanted to win. I did not want to watch dinosaurs all week, and it's like I'm not 7, so it's like the deal. But if it would have won, I would have acquiesced. But thankfully, here's our count, right? Look at that. Groundhog Day won by 120 votes almost. So here's the thing. If this was not a rigged election, all right? There's no ballot harvesting. There's no like shenanigans going on. But just so you know, I did vote personally. And as they do in Chicago, I voted early and often. And you could have too, right? If you tried it on your phone, it said, would you like to submit another answer? And so last week during the football game, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So pretty much between every play. So probably, I think I might have swayed the election a little bit, but in a legit way, all right? So are you good? You all right? So this, we feel at this series, we feel like every week there's new people. And so we want to just let you know, like, well, what's the deal with God? What is that, right? And part of it is this. There's a belief in the Bible, there's this teaching, this idea that God has woven into the fabric of reality his wisdom. His wisdom is like, yes, it is ultimately revealed in Jesus. And this word, this Bible is a verbal expression of Jesus. And now that we have it in print, it's a printed expression of Jesus. But God is also, you can't get away from God. If you think, well, I've been away from him. Well, maybe metaphorically, but he's everywhere, and he's woven his, like, who he is and what he's trying to say into the very fabric of reality. Here, look at this verse from a book in the Bible called Proverbs. It says this, wisdom shouts in the streets. she lifts up her voice in the square. In Hebrew, the word wisdom is chachma, and it's always feminine. And a lot of the women out there are like, duh, right? And so she lifts her voice in the square at the head of a noisy street. You think, well, yes, wisdom's in the world, out when I'm walking quietly by the brook. Yeah, maybe, yeah, absolutely. But it's also in the noisy street she cries out. At the entrance of the gates in the city, she utters her sayings. It's everywhere. Our job is to notice. Like our job is to have, like the Bible calls, eyes to see, ears to hear what the Lord is saying. And so that's what we're working on with God at the Movies is a spiritual practice, a discipline called noticing. And so that's the idea and the vision for the series. Now, when it comes to noticing, one of the things that people have noticed, especially there's this guy who was a literary theorist and Sanskrit scholar and whatever. His name is Joseph Campbell, and he talked about how all stories have like a pattern. Have you ever noticed, like think of all the movies you've ever watched. Have you ever noticed how you could fit them into about 4 or 5 different categories? You ever notice that? Like they're all like that. And you go, that is true. Why do we keep watching them? Because that story is embedded in us. That is different aspects of the gospel. That's what God has woven into the human psyche. That's why we keep telling the story over and over and over again. And so here's this category. It's the jerk guy, the narcissist, the Delta Bravo, that the universe conspires to show him the error of his ways and offer him redemption. You've heard that before, right? That's a story. And the lead character, Phil, is definitely a jerk. Watch this. So for the few of you that haven't seen this movie, we don't want to spoil it, but it was made in '93, so you had your chance. Here's one, Rotten Tomatoes, one of the places. Here's a little synopsis. A cynical TV weatherman, Phil, finds himself reliving the same day over and over and over when he goes on location to the small town of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. I've been there, by the way. I was speaking at some deal. But you can tell I'm big time. So to film a report about the annual Groundhog Day. His predicament drives him to distraction until he sees the way of turning the situation to his advantage. I don't know about that, but here's the thing. Speaking of movies, or speaking of stories that are embedded, speaking of stories that we just keep telling over and over, this one, I was thinking there's a lot of really famous, well-known stories that are this story. Like the most famous one is probably the one we talk about at Christmas, right? Anybody? Christmas Carol, Scrooge, right? Now, the unique thing about this movie is the kind of Twilight Zone-like premise. If you're young, Twilight Zone was a great show that pretty much had the same story every week, and some guy would wake up and everybody else was different and he thought he was going crazy. But anyways, it's kind of a Twilight Zone premise of this being stuck in this same day. And we're not told how he's stuck or why he's stuck. He's just stuck in this same day. Watch this clip to kind of get you in the mood here. I love that guy. I've got an alcoholic now. It's so awesome. Here's something, I don't know if you've ever thought about this. You know, the story is about a guy being stuck in the same day. And there's a very real sense that we're all stuck in the same day. We're all living basically the same day over and over and over and over again. Look at this. There's a verse, a book in the Bible, Ecclesiastes, and it says this in chapter 1. The sun also rises and the sun sets. Anybody have to read that book in high school or college, like The Sun Also Rises? Ernest Hemingway. It says, the sun also rises and the sun sets and hastens to the place that it rises again. Blowing toward the south and toward the north, the wind continues swirling along. On its circular course, the wind returns. All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, they flow again. All things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing. And all the people with little kids said, amen, right? Nor is the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is that which will be. And that which has been done is that which will be done. So there is nothing new under the sun. Wow. See, we're all stuck in the same day in some respect. Same life, same place. You've heard the saying, the problem is everywhere I go, I'm there, right? And so we're all like prisoners in the same day. We're prisoners of our past choices, our backgrounds, our fears, our neuroses. And have you noticed this about yourself? Because I've noticed it about you too. And that's that we keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Like, it seems like the same stupid things keep tripping us up. And then if you're like me, and maybe this could be that I need more help, but I keep making the same mistake, and I keep getting mad at myself and acting shocked that I did the same mistake that I did 1,000 times. Because this thing, the way they frame this, and the way a guy is literally stuck in the same day, it puts a question to the front in a really cool way that's worth asking, and that really, in one way or another, even if it's in the back of your mind, not the front, that everybody needs to answer. And that's this: what do I do with the apparent, at least, what do I do with the absurdity of life? What do I do with the absurdity of life? Some of you right now are going, I didn't come to church to be depressed, man. It's like, well, hang in there. It's gonna get worse. But what do I do with that? See, all of us have all of us have at different levels some sense of frustration. There's suffering in our life and in the world. And once you get a certain age, and I think you can do this in your 20s if you want to think about it, is you understand that you are either in a trial or just out of a trial, or you're about to go into a trial. And if you're just out of a trial, it's not like that's the last trial. It's not like that's the last hard thing. It's not like that's the last suffering you're gonna go through. Like, there's stuff, right? There used to be this bumper sticker. I'm glad it's not around anymore because it's got a swear word on it. But it's like, bleep happens, right? It's like, and it's like that's this. It's like, yeah, stuff just happens. And there's loss. And then there's that thing, death. Like, every life ends in death, right? There was this big study they did, and they concluded that 1 out of 1 dies, right? So what do you do with that? What does one do with that? And here's the thing. Here's a weird thing. Like, most of our strategy to live a happy, good life is to stay out of or minimize that suffering as much as possible, right? Like, run from it, stay out of it, avoid it, don't talk about it, don't think about it, like, ignore it, pretend it's not there. And then especially, then what we want to do is stay healthy, which is good, me too. Stay healthy and put off death for as long as possible, right? Good, fine, yes. Maybe I'll live long and prosper, right? But, put that off as long as possible. And then if we live like really, really old, then it's no big deal when we die. It's like, heck. And here's the problem with that. Do you remember, now I'm speaking to those of you guys who are somewhere in the neighborhood of my age, right? Do you remember when you heard somebody died in their 50s, you thought, well, he's in his 50s. It's like, Of course he died. It's like, oh, he's old, right? I don't think like that anymore. And if I can get kind of real for a minute, is our church lost, and I lost a dear friend, and we just had a service, last weekend. His name was Joe Hughes, and such a great dude. And here's the thing, Joe lived to be 90, and at 90, Joe was still teaching in our men's ministry. Joe was still maybe the smartest guy that I knew, that I was hung around with. And still, like, I went to his 90th birthday party, and he's in a Hawaiian shirt with a lei and just running around and mixing it up with everybody. And then it kind of happened suddenly. And I'm going to say this. You're like, bro, but he's 90. It's like, dude, that didn't, I think I could say this for every one of his family members. And for me, didn't matter, didn't help. Like, yes, you're thankful you got all this time. But it always seems tragic, doesn't it? It always seems like, dang it. What do we do with the absurdity of life? Well, that's the answer to that question is the movie, right? And so here's one response to the absurdity of life, the apparent absurdity, right here. Watch this clip. So option one is this word nihilism. I know that you're like, I don't know what that is, and or maybe you do, but here's what one dictionary says that it is. It's a noun: the rejection of all religious and moral principles in the belief that life is meaningless. Nihil is the Latin word for nothing. Like they say in like theological Bible study circles that Genesis says that creation was created ex nihilo, from nothing, right? And so nihilism is nothingism. Now, few people have ever heard of this, and fewer still subscribe to it. Nietzsche, maybe a few others, but few people actually say, I'm a nihilist. But here's the thing, the jerk inside of Phil and the jerk inside of me, and maybe in you, is actually living this out a lot of times. See, just like when Phil or when I define the meaning of my life, starting with me as the center, this is where you end up. Like, even if you're a Christian, you're like, well, I'm a Christian. I can't be a nihilist. True, you can't think like that. But when you define your life, see, the thing is that's cool about this movie is this repetition forced him to define what he was going to do with his life. If he was living like he usually did, he'd be stuck in the same day and wouldn't even know it, and maybe this question would never come up. And that's why this is a great movie, because it makes us ask the question too. What do I do with this? Here's the thing. If I start with me and work my way out, then I end up as kind of a low-grade nihilist. See, what would you do? Like, you've probably been in BS sessions with friends and stuff and just talk like you're just chopping it up. And does this question ever come up? Okay, if you would never get caught and no one would ever know, would you do whatever it is, right? What would you do with no consequences, no connection? And that's the thing, is he is totally alone in this. That's the saddest part, is he's totally alone in this. It sounds like Sartre or something. And although most people can't get on board with Sartre and all this, when we start from me and concern ourselves with me, it's essentially the same thing. That's option one. Now, if you don't choose anything else, you might not go, yeah, there's no meaning, but you're going to live with a substandard meaning. substandard purpose. Option 2, here it is. Transcendent meaning, and how does that happen? Via love. Transcendent meaning via love. There is love as your meaning, as your purpose, and there is nothingness. You think, well, surely there's got to be some other options. Well, there really isn't. See, here's what transcendent means. It means that it doesn't start with me, and it's true whether I believe it or not. It's true even if nobody believes it. It's like gravity. Oh, I don't believe in gravity. Well, none of my friends do. Well, that doesn't really make any difference. It's still true. See, and that meaning, the meaning that is true whether you subscribe or not, is love, like real, actual love. If you watch this movie, there's phases. Like, it's kind of interesting because, and the hard thing about picking clips for this movie is that it's kind of like a circle. It keeps going in a circle because it's the same day, and it just keeps going like a circle is going down like this. And so in the top circles, Phil is just, he starts off as this entitled Delta Bravo jerk, right? And then he goes down a level, and then he just is confused and scared and freaked out. And then there's the phase where, like that you just saw, where he just indulges his appetite. The only good he can imagine is that he just indulges his appetite. Pleasure becomes the highest good. In Philippians 3, it says, people like this, their God is their appetites. Their God is their stomach. They're just like following their appetites around. Pleasure, that's the point. Then there's another phase that Phil goes to that a lot of people get stuck on because it masquerades as the meaning which God has for us of love. And it's like relationship. Oh, that's my meaning, is relationship. It's better, it's a slight upgrade, but here's what you'll see with Phil in this when he gets to this level, is he's grabbing on to relationship like a drowning man grabbing onto a life preserver. And when you do that, here's what tends to happen. You know, they say, for most people, when you see somebody drowning, the best idea is not to like jump in and get them, right? Because you guys know this, because what a drowning person is gonna grab onto you, it's just instinct, right? Like nobody's business. You're way better off handing them a pole or throwing them a flotation or whatever. So just since summer's coming, I thought we'd give you that. But phase 3, the funny thing is, the Bible way to put it is he dies to himself. He dethrones himself. He lives a bigger story. See, what you think is going on in this world, what you think is going on around you, it makes all the difference. If you think that everything is random and bleep happens and it's just like just random suffering and random lucky stuff, then that's gonna make all the difference, if not in your choices, in what's going on and how happy you are inside. See, one of the main points, like one of the themes, like there's some things, and we try to teach on these a lot at Journey. There's some things that are so in the Bible that you can almost just drop it, throw it open, and it'll be there. Something like this will be there. And one of the classic statements of answers to this question of like, what do I do with the apparent absurdity of life? That's, if you want to say, what is the Bible about in one sentence? That might be it. That would be a decent one. But this one of transcendent meaning love, here, let's see how John puts it in his letter. There's 3 of them. So this is the first one. Let's read this. I'll read it to you and you can follow along. This is on your outline. It'll be on the screen. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him and he in God. That's the transcendent part, right? If you confess that, and that's what you're doing when you get baptized. You are confessing that Jesus is the Son of God. And in him, and we are in him. God, when you do that, God starts living in you in a way that he never has before. and you start living in God in a way you never have before. It starts with, the whole meaning starts with, like real transcendent meaning, starts with Jesus and getting on board, ready, that he is the unique Son of God. Ready? ... And I am not. See, why this is, you might think, yes, you have to have your doctrine straight. No, that's not what this is about. See, what this is about is when you say, all right, Jesus, I confess that you are the unique Son of God. You're saying, and I am not. And here's what that's doing. That is dethroning, when I do that, that dethrones me. I'm no longer the king of my own life. I'm no longer the captain of my ship, the master of my soul. It's not like I don't have any responsibility for what I do after that. It's just like, dude, I am acknowledging that I do not belong on the throne, and he does. God takes up residence in you, and wherever God is, the knee, we just sang this, right? The knee should be bowed in the presence of God. The knee should be bowed. And that's what you're saying. You're going, I'm good with that. I'm on board. Let's keep reading. We have come to know and believe and have believed the love which God has for us. What Jesus did for us on the cross is ultimate love. Another place in the Bible says God demonstrated his love toward us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God didn't say, listen, you guys, all right, meet me halfway. If you can show me a little improvement, I just need a little, then we can have, like we'll get together. No, while we still had our middle finger up to heaven, Christ died for us. God, and notice this, God is love. This is why this works. This is why the meaning, like transcendent meaning, how you get there is love, because God is love. Like it's not what he does, it's who he is. God is love. And the one who abides in love, abides in God. If you're living and remaining in love, you're remaining in God, and God abides in him. Now ready? Verse 17 it's a doozy. By this, love is perfected. It's teleao. It grows. It comes to maturity. By this, love is perfected with us so that we may have confidence in the day of judgment. That's the thing. One of the things that love leads you to is the understanding that this phase of my existence is finite. In Psalms, it says, teach us to number our days. There's a number. And then after that, there is a judgment. There is an account of those, which should, if you're a smart person, scare the bejesus out of you. Because I don't know what your life looks like, but there's a lot of parts of my life that I'm like, ooh, eesh, I hope God didn't see that. Like there's plenty of those. But here's what happens when God lives in you, when love lives in you, when you confess that Jesus is the true Son of God. Look at this, that we may have confidence in the day of judgment. How about that? Instead of going, oh man, that day, boy, if I survive that. No, you can have confidence in the day of judgment. When our kids were, maybe I shouldn't say this, it's pretty funny though. When our kids were growing up, part of what you deal with is the parent-teacher conferences, you know what I mean? And what's the night they call where the parents and you're going to this classes, back to school night. You can tell it's been a while. So back to school night. And we had 3 kids, and they were all great. They were all smart. But for 2 of the 3, school didn't really work for them. You know what I mean? Like, we had one person that would like stay up late, finish her homework, do a great job, write an A paper, stuff it in her backpack, and go to school and forget to turn it in. So I'm like, ugh, right? I'm not going to tell you which one, Krista, but she's now a college professor, so it all worked out. But then we had Like if your kid in junior high is voted most funniest, the kids love it, you don't love it as a parent, right? That probably means to his teachers, he's most annoying, right, teachers? Right, voted most funniest. But then we had this middle kid who did everything on time, did what was told, figured it out, super involved, loved the whole process. And it was funny, like when parent back to school night, with the other two, we would kind of sit in the back, try not to make eye contact with the teacher and stuff, and like kind of go, when can we get out of here? With middle kid, Bethany, we're walking in. I'm like, hey, how you doing, everyone? How's it going? Hey, I'll just be sitting right here in front. Anybody need parenting advice, just let me know. I got this. You know, you too can be a great parent. Right? If you've had even one kid, but especially if you've had two, you realize, dude, I don't have as much to do with this as I think. But see, we can have confidence in the day of judgment because we're walking in going, yeah, I'm with him. That the unique Son of God, that's him and me. He's in me, I'm in him. Yeah, I'm gonna be just fine. Now, ready? This line should blow your mind. This is the line of the morning, right? We have confidence in the day of judgment because as he is, follow the grammar here, because as he is, who's he in this text? Starts with a J, ends with Jesus. All right, Jesus, right? Because as he is, so also are we in this world. Right? I'm going to confess something to you. I had read this book, this text, I don't even know how many times. I'd taught on it a bunch of times. I'd memorized this whole chapter, and I mean, read it in Greek and whatever. I never even noticed this line until Chris Gore was preaching about 2 years ago, and he's coming back in November, which is awesome. Until he was preaching this passage, and it was on this line, and I'm like, how did I miss this? This is the coolest thing ever. Because as he is, so are we in the world. You know what that means? Meaning, purpose, all the time. Because Jesus, or God is deploying you as Jesus's in the world. Whoa, right? Whoa. If that doesn't make you go, whoa, then you're not getting it. So keep reading until you get it. There's no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Because fear involves punishment, and the one who fears is not perfected in love. Do you notice in this movie, by the end, when Bill Murray is experiencing what actual love is, that there's a confidence to him. He's not a smart aleck anymore. He doesn't feel the need to make other people feel inferior so he can feel okay about himself, which is like when someone's a jerk, that's really, you guys know this, that's really what's happening. He doesn't feel any need to that. There's kind of a boldness to him that's really awesome and a kind of a security. We love, John says, because he first loved us. If you're a churchgoer, I can't believe you've never heard this verse, right? Raise your hand if you ever heard this verse before. It's okay if you haven't. Okay, I can now believe it. But we love because he first loved us. Now listen, this is huge because this is where a lot of people go wrong. This is where we screw this up. When you hear this, like meaning by a love, your natural, here's where your brain goes, and kind of, you go like this. Oh yeah, I feel a little guilty. Yeah, I don't love like I should. Yeah, okay, so I'm gonna try a lot harder to love and be a loving person this week. I'm gonna try. Oh, I'm going after it this week. Verse 19, we love, why? Because he first loved us. So ready? The answer is not try harder. The answer is to drink heartier, to eat heartier, to feast on his love, to go deeper and be loved more by him. Your goal is not, all right, I'm going to be a loving person this week. You can't do that. It won't work. But your goal could be, I'm going to experience so much of God's love this week that I'm guessing it's going to flow out of me somewhere, somehow. You see how different that is? How wildly different that is? One is religion that nobody likes and that everybody eventually turns on and deconstructs and all this stuff. The other is like, whoa, it's the power that created the universe. If someone says, I love God and hates his brother, he's a liar. Duh, because you're not experiencing, if you're not loving others, it's because you're not experiencing the love of God yourself. For the one who does not love his brother whom he has seen cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this is the commandment we have from him, that the one who loves God should love his brother also. Did you guys notice in this text how there's this back and forth between God loves us, we're in God, he loves us, we love other people. There's this thing going on, and God says, okay, see that thing going on? Jump into that. Dive into that. And when you acknowledge and confess Jesus as the Son of God, you're in. You get dragged into that. Now, there's 3 ways to say this or think about this that I think this movie answers. And the first is this: people are real and are to be loved. At first in this movie, Jerk Phil, people are not real. He's the only thing that's real. And so the universe says, okay, since you're all that's real, why don't you live in a world where you're the only one real? And and it's miserable, right? It's miserable for him. But the reality is, those people out there are real people, and they are to be loved. That's the point. They are to be loved. We're going to skip clip 4 back there. I know, there's another service coming, so we have to. But there's a guy named Karol Wojtyla. I can never quite say his name. He's a Polish guy who ended up being Pope John Paul II. But before he was that, he wrote this book, and it said this: the person is the kind of good which does not admit of use and cannot be treated as an object of use, and as such, the means to an end. That's what people are to him when he goes past the hedonism stage and goes relationship. Phil decides that he really likes Rita and wants her to fall in love with him. And so he keeps perfecting the day and learning how to do that. But he's the drowning man and the life preserver. That's not love. It's not like, oh, look how he loves that life preserver. No, he's using her as a means to an end. And then he goes on to say this: the person is the kind of good. Everybody you meet is the kind of good towards which the only proper and adequate attitude is love. My wife got me that quote this week, and it's so good. People are real and to be loved. This week, this happens almost every week, but this week. So you probably could guess that I drive here and out of here multiple times a week because I work here. So like one of the advantages of being in kind of a light industrial neighborhood like we are is that we're very close to a dump. And that's kind of cool, right? So it's not unusual to be trying to get out, and this always happens. This week, because of my poor planning, this has been me my whole life. It's like, if you come here and have a meeting with me, I'll be right on time. But if I have to go anywhere, like 3 blocks away, I'm gonna be late. So I had a meeting in downtown La Mesa, and I, of course, overestimated how much this one thing would take, or underestimated. And so I'm leaving, and I'm leaving it like, I think I had 8 minutes to get to a meeting in like little downtown La Mesa on Spring Street. So you guys you all come here, so you know, okay, today, right now, that would be fine, Ed. But this was Wednesday afternoon about 4, right? So Idiot Ed is there, and I leave out of this side, and I'm driving down like towards the dump. And as happens frequently, a big old garbage truck just pulls out in front of me. Like kind of like, dude, you should have let me gone. Like that kind of pull out. Sometimes, if you're lucky, it'll be a garbage semi that's pulling out, right? And yeah. Anyways, I have so many jokes I'm holding in right now. But so I'm like, Then, as if I didn't even know this was physically possible. I'm following this truck. And out of this other area, this truck with a big old trailer pulls right behind the garbage truck. And now I'm behind two of these guys going like 4.5 miles an hour, right? And in my head, I'm rehearsing a familiar script. And it has words like idiot and dumb butt and other things in there, and learn to drive and all this stuff. And usually it's just, okay, that's the end of it. And then I'm like, I'm sorry, Lord, I don't. But this time the Lord interrupted me and said, these dudes are trying to make a living. And I was like, whoa. That was a phrase my dad would use, trying to make a living. Because you guys know this, making a living is hard. It's hard. And all of a sudden I'm like, all right, they're just like me. They're just trying to make a living. See, that's the personalistic norm that St. John Paul was talking about. Here's the second way this works out. So people are real and to be loved. And here's the second one. My silly little assignment matters. What I love about this is Phil is a weatherman. And he's not doing interviews on 60 Minutes with the Shah of Iran or with the Ayatollah or something like that. Bunch of 80s references there. But he's the part of the news that's I don't know, sports, weather. I mean, it's like that. It's not the serious part. He's like I grew up in LA-ish, more Orange County, and all our weathermen had these names that you knew weren't real that were weather-related names. There was a guy named Dallas Rains and Johnny Mountain and, all this. Anybody from there? It's like, you know that. And it's like, it's like, oh, this is such silliness. And in LA, you could do that because you don't even need to know. It's the same weather every day. It's like you just need a calendar to predict the weather, just like here, right? So he's a weatherman. But as he changes and finds meaning in love, he realizes my silly little assignment actually matters. Watch, there's going to be 3 clips I'm weaving together, and look how this ends up. Here's the final thing that it means to pick option 2. Transcendent meaning that comes through love, that is given to us by God. It's this: you realize that mysterious powers determine my days. Even if you're a Christ follower, even if you know the Bible, even if you read the Bible and you're very involved in church, there's a mysteriousness that is going to be beyond you your whole life. You probably already experienced it, like, whoa, how did I get here? What's going on here? Whoa, I didn't expect this. There are bigger things and bigger purposes, and you can feel it once you have eyes to see it. And again, that's what we're working on with God at the Movies. Once you have eyes to see it, you see it everywhere. You realize that something larger is at work, something important. Here's one of a gajillion Bible verses that say this. Jeremiah 10:23, I know, Lord, that a man's way is not in himself. It's not in himself. So here's the conundrum. It is this. Without God, here's the equation you could have actually. No God equals no meaning, no purpose. Eventually, it'll mean no love, no real love. There's maybe today the most well-known atheist is a guy named Richard Dawkins. Here's one of his quotes. In a universe of electrons and selfish genes, blind physical forces, and genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt and other people are going to get lucky. And you won't find any rhyme or reason in it, nor any justice. The universe that we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if at bottom there is no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pitiless indifference. Thank you, Mr. Sunshine. So, see, it challenges us to go, okay, part of what you see in the circular day over and over again is that you gotta follow it all the way to love. All those other things are stopping short. They can give you the illusion of some reason to live, but not what you really need. No power to live, for sure. You can't make up meaning. You can only find it in God. And he wants you to live your best day over and over and over again. That's what he's offering you. Not your easiest day, not your funnest day, your best day over and over. And you're thinking, well, what about today? And for some of you, here's the verse of the morning for you. And working together with him, we urge you not to receive the grace of God in vain. For he says, and now he's going to quote the Old Testament, at the acceptable moment, at the acceptable time, I listened to you. And on the day of salvation, I helped you. Behold, when's that time? Now is the acceptable time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. See, what it means, these mysterious forces are guiding our life, is that love is guiding our life. And there's actually something going on that's big and important. So step one is to acknowledge and confess Jesus Christ as the Son of God, so that he'll come into your heart and love will come into your heart. And then that is a force to be reckoned with. God's point for your life is in that line we read. As he, Jesus, as he is, so are we in the world. That's the life he's inviting you into. So we're going to pray, and then we've got a couple of worship songs we're going to enjoy. So why don't you stand up? And maybe today is the day of salvation for you. Today's the day that you confess that Jesus is the unique Son of God, and you invite him into your life, the one who died and demonstrated his love and demonstrated his power by rising from the dead. And in another thing that John wrote, stands at the door and knocks. You're going, dude, I need to open that door. Well, open it. Today's the day. Why don't you bow your head, close your eyes, and if that's you, why don't you just tell him, you can use this prayer if you want, if it works for you. I'll say it. You can say it right after me to God. God, I'm here today to acknowledge that Jesus is the true Son of God, to confess him and to invite him into my life. I receive your forgiveness that you purchased on the cross, and I receive your love as the unstoppable force in my life. Make me the person that you've invited me to be. In In Jesus' name, amen. Let's pursue God. Let's pursue love, and let's pursue meaning.